Welcome to day 3 of the Gira Online LATAM 2023. Today we have 3 more great sessions. The first one is going to be all about Microsoft Azure Storage account. The second one, actually, I will present myself, is let's talk about endpoint protection, where I will give you some good overview of how you can really take the security from the endpoint to the next level. And then the last one is how to build the Azure Biceps different modules. Okay, today with me to get things started with the first session, I have here with me Seena. She's going to present all about Microsoft Azure account. Sorry, let me start again. All about Microsoft Azure Storage account. Yeah, Seena, thanks very much for spending your time with us on this next roughly 1 hour. Yeah, if you want to give a quick intro about yourself, and then I can share your screen and you can take over the show.
Yeah, thanks, Jackson. Thanks for your introduction. My name is Seena Khan, and I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. I have around 12 plus years of experience in IT training industry as well as implementation, configuration, and in various fields. Okay, and today I'm going to present about Azure storage accounts. It's an overview about all the topics is related to the storage accounts we will discuss. Then I will give some demo about how to create storage accounts and what are the types of storage accounts, or what are the different types of services, okay, in storage accounts there. So these are the things we are going to discuss today.
Okay, that's
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah, I know, especially from the storage account, that can be a little bit confusing because there are different types and then different prices and so on. People I know
Yes.
get lost in order to understand what's the best, for them. But yeah,
Yes.
that's great. Yeah, if you want to share your screen, and then I
Yeah.
can share from here, and then you can take over.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. I can see now. Okay. Yeah, anyway, your share, your screen is in there. And then if you want to start, I will be here on the background. And then everybody watching us from home, if you have any questions, please just feel free to type them into the chat box. And then I will ask the questions for Seena, as they come, we will tackle them. Okay, the floor is yours. And I will be here in the background if you need anything.
Okay. Okay, Jackson. Thank you. Thank you so
No
much.
problem.
Yeah. So let's start with administer Azure Storage. This is a part of AZ104, the exam preparation. So I take this one. Okay, so this will help you to go through the storage accounts, the entire overview, and it will help you to give the exams also very easily for this topic, this particular topic. So let's go. First, we are going to discuss about on this configure storage accounts, configure blob storage, configure storage security, and configure Azure Files and File Sync. So my screen is visible, right, Jackson?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, we can see perfectly. Yeah,
So
no problem.
let's go for configure storage accounts. So here we are going to discuss like, okay, how to implement as Azure Storage, then explore the various storage services, then determine storage account kinds and the various replication strategies of Azure storage accounts, then access storage, secure storage endpoints. There is a small demonstration. So let's go for implement Azure Storage. So Azure Storage actually it is a service which you can use to store files, messages, tables, and other types of information. So it offers massively scalable object store for data objects. So it provides a file system service for the cloud, a messaging store for reliable messaging, and a NoSQL store also we can see. So Azure Storage is a service which you can use to store, same in the slide, okay, store files, messages, tables, and other types of information. You can use Azure Storage for applications like file shares, and developers also can use for Azure Storage for working data. Then working data which includes like the websites, mobile apps, desktop applications, etc. It is very durable, secure, scalable, and managed and accessible. So we can use it for storage for virtual machines, structured and unstructured data. So here we can discuss, like, what does it mean, like unstructured data and structured data. So unstructured data, a kind of like flat files, okay, different types of files like videos, audios, images, etc. Like all the binary large object data we can store as an unstructured data. And then structured data, there is a grid view format or table format data we can store there. So two tiers also there for when you are going to create an Azure Storage account. You can see two tiers there for premium and standard tier. So for standard tiers, storage accounts are like backed by magnetic hard disk drives like HDD. A standard storage account provides the lowest cost per gigabyte. So you can use standard tier storage for applications that require bulk storage or where data is infrequently accessed. So you can use the standard. Premium storage account are backed by SSD, that is the solid state drives, and offer consistent low latency performance. So you can use premium storage for Azure Virtual Machine Disk with input output intensive applications like databases and all. Next topic, explore Azure storage services. So these are the four major categories of Azure storage services. First one is about Azure containers, then Azure tables, then Azure queues, and then Azure files. Azure containers, a massively scalable object store for text and binary data. So here blobs kind of data you can store in Azure containers. Like in the previous slide, we have discussed like unstructured data. So that type of data you can store where in the Azure containers. Then next is Azure tables. Azure table, which is ideal for storing structured non-relational data. For non-relational data, we are in the sense of like, okay, no SQL data. So SQL data, if you want to store, we have a separate service called the SQL databases service. So we can use that in Microsoft Azure for storing relational data. So here for Azure tables in storage service, okay, we are using for structured data and which is non-related. Then the third one is Azure Queues, which is a messaging store for reliable messaging between application components. So here, like, okay, so there is an application and these applications sending messages or sending messages through web services. Okay, so these messages you can store in Azure Queues and then later it can be used by users. Then Azure Files, managed file shares for on cloud or on premises deployment. So here in Azure Files, okay, if you are having an on-premises file server, you want to synchronize your on-premises file server with your Azure Files, so you can use that. So multiple branches are there for your organization. Then there is a centralized unit. So in that situation, okay, so the other branches people or other branches users want to see the data of other branches. So then they can make it as a centralized unit and they can synchronize it with that, and then the other users also can access the same data. Now determine the storage account kinds. So these are the storage account kinds you are having. Standard general purpose V2, then premium block blobs, premium file shares, and premium page blobs. So standard general purpose V2, we are using the supported services like blob storage, queue storage, table storage, and Azure storage. So blob storage, which includes the data lake storage as well. So most scenarios like, okay, so these are the most scenarios we are using standard general purpose V2. Then the next one is premium block blobs. Premium blob storage. This is completely for the blob storage, blob scenarios with high transaction rates or scenarios which you are using smaller objects or require consistently low latency. Okay, so there is a scenario like, okay, so the premium blocks we are using the applications, okay, which is having high performance. Okay, so then we are using like, okay, there are images, videos, audios we want to share across applications. then we can use premium block blobs. The next one is premium file shares. Premium file shares, okay, the supported service is completely the Azure files. The name itself is showing, okay, so premium file shares. So this is the supported service, and it is using, okay, whenever the recommended for an enterprise or high performance scale applications. You can use premium file shares if you require support for both SMB and NFS file shares. In that situation, we can use premium file shares. The next one is premium page blobs. Premium page blobs, this is completely for the service page blobs only. So premium high performance storage account for page blobs. Page blobs are ideal for storing index based and sparse data structures such as operating systems, data disk for the virtual machines, and databases. So these are the different types of or different kinds of storage accounts. And also, all storage accounts are encrypted by using storage service encryption data addresses. So automatically, whenever you are sending data to a storage accounts, automatically it will get encrypted by using storage service encryption. It is provided by Microsoft itself. Now, our next topic is about the replication strategies of the storage account. There are different replication strategies we are applying in our storage in my Azure storage accounts. So that is locally redundant storage, that is LRS, then ZRS, zone redundant storage, then geo redundant storage, that is GRS, then RAGRS, that is read access geo redundant storage. Again, okay, geo zone redundant storage, then read access geo zone redundant storage. So let's go for one by one. The first one is about locally redundant storage. So locally redundant storage is the lowest cost replication option, and it offers the least durability compared to other strategies. So if a data center level disaster occurs, okay, such as like any fire or flooding or any natural calamities, okay, so all replicas might be lost or unrecoverable. So this is the limitation of this LRS. It is having three replicas and one region. So it protects against disk node or rack failures. Your data is consistently changing, like when we can use the LRS, like whenever your data is constantly changing, like in a live feed, and storing that data is not essential. So in that situation you can use LRS, and your application is restricted to replicating data only within a country or region due to the data governance requirements. So in that situation also LRS you can use. The next is ZRS. So three replicas and three zones in one region. So like, okay, so there is a region. So in that region, three zones are there. So each zone is having its own replicate. So it is replicates your data across these three storage clusters in a single region. So these three different zones. So each storage cluster is physically separated from the others and resides in its own availability zone, and each availability zone and the ZRS cluster within it is autonomous and has separate utilities and network capabilities as well. So it is synchronous writes to all three zones. So if one zone is having any issues, so other zone will take care of the data. It will serve the data. So again, ZRS is not currently available in all regions. Okay, and changing to ZRS from another data replication option requires the physical data movement from a single storage stamp to multiple stamp within a region. So if you are having an LRS, okay, you want to replicate or you want to change it to ZRS. Okay, so then these are the things we need, like, okay, so it requires a physical data movement from a single storage stamp to multiple stamps within the region. Now, next is GRS. GRS is geo redundant storage. It is six replicas and two regions there. Okay, three per region. The replicas, okay, is happening per region, three replicas. So it protects against major regional disasters. So if your region is having like a natural calamity or flood or anything or earthquakes, okay, then the another region will serve your data. So your data will protect against such type of regional disasters, and asynchronously copy to the secondary. So if you implement GRS, you have two related options to choose from, like GRS replicated your data to another data center in a secondary region, and the data is available to be read-only if Microsoft initiates a failover from the primary to secondary region. Like, okay, if any disaster happens in the primary region, so you need to wait for the Microsoft initiation. Okay, so after that, okay, once Microsoft initiates, okay, then only the data will be available as a read only. Then another one, read access geo redundant storage. So this is also the same GRS, but there is one more thing, additional capability, that is read access to the secondary. So we don't need to wait for Microsoft initiation to retrieve the data. So here by default, read access copy of the data will be available for the users for RAGRS, that is the read access geo redundant storage. So it is completely based on GRS, and plus this is the additional advantage of read access geo redundant storage. So GRS replicates your data to another data center in a secondary region and also provides you with the option to read from the secondary region. Now the next is GZRS, that is GeoZone Redundant Storage. So here 6 replicas there, 3 plus 1 zones and 2 regions. So first is having 3 replicas, and the second region only 1 replica. So 2 regions again we are using in GZRS. So it protects against disk, node, rack, zone and region failures. So zone redundant storage combines the high availability of zone redundant storage with protection from regional outages as provided by geo redundant storage. So data in a GZRS storage account is replicated across 3 Azure availability zones in the primary region and also replicated to a secondary geographic region for protection from the regional disasters. So it's synchronous writes to all 3 zones and asynchronous copy to the secondary. So this is the GZRS. Now next is array GZRS. So again, this is also the same way. Okay, so here GZRS we are using, and again the read access capability to the secondary we are getting by using array GRS. So separate secondary endpoint and RPO delay to the secondary can be queried. So if any what we can say, the delay to the data accessibility is happening, okay, then it can be by using GZRS. Okay, it can be rectified by array GZRS. That is the read access copy of the data you get. Next is access storage. So every object has a unique URL address. So same here also in this service, container service. Okay, it is having a unique URL, my storage account .blob.core.windows.net. By seeing the URL itself, okay, we can easily identify which service it is, which storage service it is. So by using here, you can see blob.core.windows.net. Then table service. So it mentioned here the table.core.windows.net. So this particular URL is for the table service of storage account. Another one is storageaccount.q.core.windows.net. So this URL is for the queue service, and the file service, again, file.core.windows.net. So the combination of the subdomain and the domain name, which is specific to each service, forms an endpoint for your storage account. You can configure a custom domain as well. So like to access blob data in your Azure account. So the default endpoint of the Azure blob storage is like, okay, so storage account name and then the blob.core windows.net. You can also use the web endpoint, which is generated as a part of the static websites. So if you map a custom domain and a subdomain such as, like here for example, www.condesso.com. Okay, so to the blob or web endpoint for your storage endpoint or storage account, Your users can use that domain to access the blob data in your storage account. So for example, here the CNAME record blobs.condensor.com, you can provide it for the users to access the blob data, and for this is it will map it to actually which URL, condensorblobs.blog.core windows.net. So for that we are using CNAME record as well. Now secure storage endpoints. In Azure portal, each Azure services has required steps to configure the service endpoints and restrict network access for the service. So to access these settings for your storage account, you can use what the firewalls and virtual network settings. So you can add the virtual networks that should have access to the service for the account. So when you are going to configure the service endpoints, okay, so some points you need to consider. So the first is the firewalls and virtual networks settings restrict the access to the storage account from specific subnets on virtual networks or public IPs. Then you can configure the service to allow access to one or more public IP ranges. Then subnets and virtual networks must exist in the same Azure region or region pair as your storage accounts. So here, when you are testing the service endpoint, you must have to verify the endpoint limit access, okay, as it is expected. So these are the things you have to consider when you are configuring service endpoints for the storage accounts. Now the next is configure blob storage. Here we are going to discuss about implementing blob storage, then create blob containers, create blob access styles, add blob lifecycle management rules, determine blob object replication. Now we'll go for implement blob storage. It stores unstructured data in the cloud. So unstructured data, that is like binary large object data, images, audios, videos, etc. So it can store any type of text or binary data. So also referred to as an object storage. So or container storage also. So blob storage can store any type of text or binary data. So some examples like text documents or images, video files, and application installers, etc. So blob storage uses three resources to store and manage your data. So what is that is Azure Storage account, containers in an Azure Storage account, and blobs in a container. So these are the three resources when blob storage we are using to store and manage your data. So to implement blob storage, you have to configure several settings like blob container options, blob types and upload options, blob storage access styles, blob lifecycle rules, blob object replication options, etc. So here in this diagram, you can see a storage account, okay, that is the production. The name of the storage account is production, and there is containers. So two containers are there, one is pictures and another one is movies. So it is classified based on the data types. So pictures will comes in the pictures blobs, and the movies, that is the videos will comes into the another blob types. So there are many common uses for blob storage as well. Like consider browser uploads. So you can use blob storage to serve images or documents directly to the browser. Then consider distributed access. Like, okay, you can store files for the distributed access, such as during an installation process. Okay, so without any restrictions or without any difficulties, okay, so you can access the files on the at the time of installation process. Then consider streaming data, like streaming videos and audios by using the blob storage. Then blob storage is a great solution for storing data for backups and restore any disaster recovery or archiving data, okay, archiving files, archiving data, okay, we are using blob storage. Then another one is application access, that is you can store data in blob storage for analysis by an on-premises or Azure hosted services. Now next is how to create the blob containers. Azure Blob Storage uses a container resource to group a set of blobs. Okay, so the container is having group of or multiple number of blobs. A blob can't exist by itself in a blob storage. So a blob must be stored in the container resources. So there are some characteristics, okay, you need to know, that is the configuration characteristics you need to know when you are going to create containers and the blobs. So all blobs must be in a container. A container can store an unlimited number of blobs. An Azure storage account can contain an unlimited number of containers. So you can create the container in Azure portal. You can upload blobs into that particular container. So when you are going to create the container, so here go to the storage account. Okay, firstly you have to create a storage account, and in that storage account you have to open that, and there in that pane you can see a plus container option. Click on that, and there you have to create the container by adding the name and the public access level. So these are the access level of the container. Like, okay, there are basically three access levels we are using for creating containers. One is private, another one is blob, and the third one is container. Private is for the anonymous. There is no anonymous accessibility we are providing users. So users must have a username password. That means with the authentication and authorization accessibility only they can access the blobs, that is the private blobs. Then blob access, if you are selecting, then anonymous public read access for blobs only, not for the entire container blobs. Okay, only for that particular blob you want to provide the anonymous accessibility, then you can use the blob access. Then container access, anonymous public read and list access to the entire container including the blobs. So that means whatever or how many numbers of blobs are available there in the container, okay, all can access by the anonymous users. So it provides the public read and list access to that but entire container. So how many blobs are there, so all can view by the anonymous users. So these are the three kind of public access level of a container. Now create blob access tiers. So Azure Storage supports several access tiers for blob data, including hot tier, cool tier, and archive tier. So each access tier is optimized to support a particular pattern of data usage. So things to know, you must have to know about the each. Okay, when we are using these each tiers, and if we want to switch in between these tiers, we can do that. Okay, so all that stuff we are going to discuss. So first is hot tier. Hot tier actually it is optimized for frequent reads and writes of objects in Azure storage account. So a good usage case is like, if the data is actively being processed. Okay, so frequently the users are frequently accessing the data, then that type of data we can keep where in the hot tier. And cool tier is for optimized for storing large amount of data that is infrequently accessed and stored for at least 30 days. So here like a short-term backup or disaster recovery data sets or older media content, okay, infrequently users can access, okay, infrequently users are accessing the data. So that kind of data we can store where in the cool tier. And then there is the archive tier, which is optimized for data that can tolerate several hours of retrieval latency and will remain in the archive tier for at least 180 days. So data for archive tiers like secondary backups, original raw data, and legally required compliance information. Okay, so this tier is actually is the most cost-effective option for storing data. So accessing data is more expensive in the archive tier than accessing data in other tiers as well. And after creating, for example, like, okay, so once you have set your data or once you have stored your data in the hot tier, okay, and later or after 3 months, after a particular duration of time, okay, so that data is not frequently accessing, you can change it to the cool tier. So you can switch between these access tiles at any time. Now add blob lifecycle management rules. So every data set has a unique life cycle. So early in the life cycle, users tend to access some of the data in the set, but not all of the data. So as the data set ages, so access to all of the data in the set tends to dramatically reduce. So some data stays idle in the cloud and is rarely accessed after it's stored. Okay, so that kind of data, like if we can provide an expiry date, okay, so where after that, after meeting the expiry date, where it has to move, okay, so that we can configure there. So here is the life cycle management rules we can use for it. So transitioning of blobs to a cooler storage tier to optimize for performance and cost. So delete blobs at the end of their life cycle. Apply rules to filtered paths in the storage account. So here you can provide as a rule. So if base blobs were last modified, okay, and here more than, okay, so like as per your company rules, as per your company requirements, or that particular document requirements, okay, so here like 1 month, more than 30 days, or more than 50 days or 60 days, okay, you can provide that. And then delete the blob. Either you can delete it or move to cool storage. Okay, so if it is infrequently accessing but it needed, okay, then move to the cool storage, then move to archive storage. So this is not accessing, but sometimes, okay, if the users need it, then move to archive storage. So wherever you want to move your data, okay, after the expiration completes, okay, you can configure this by using a lifecycle management rule. Next is determine blob object replication. So object replication copies blobs in a container asynchronously according to policy rules that you configure. Then during the replication process, okay, so the blob contents, okay, so the contents are copied from the source container to the destination container. So these are the contents, okay, we can copy from the source container to the destination, that is blob contents, blob metadata and the properties, and any versions of the data associated with the blob. So in this illustration, it shows an asynchronous replication of the blob containers between two regions. So here the source account, source container one, blob one text, and here it is the asynchronous replication to the region 2 and the region 3 there is. Okay, so here it is, it shows. So when you are configuring or blob object replication, there are some considerations you need to keep in mind. This object replication requires that blob versioning is enabled on both source and the destination accounts, and object replication doesn't support blob snapshots, and object replication is supported when the source and the destination accounts are in the hot or the cool tier. So when you configure object replication, you create replication policy that specifies the specifies the source Azure storage account and the destination storage account as well. So these are the points you need to consider when you are configuring an object blob object replication. Things to consider when configuring the object replication, like consider latency reductions, like minimize latency with the blob object replication. So you can reduce latency for read requests by enabling clients to consume data from a region that is in closer with the physical proximity. Then consider efficiency for compute loads or compute workloads. Then we need to consider optimizing the data distribution, like optimize your configuration of data distribution. You can process or analyze data in a single location and then replicate only the results to other regions. Then optimize cost. Manage your configuration and optimize your storage policies to achieve cost benefits. So after your data is replicated, you can reduce cost by moving the data to the archive tier by using lifecycle management policies again. Okay, let me so let me showing a demo about storage accounts. So after logging into my Azure portal, so this is my environment here in the storage accounts. So I have already created two storage accounts, which is a storage V2 kind, general purpose storage V2 kind, and the location you can see here, it is in the North Europe and subscription. So when I am going to create a new one, just click on plus create, and then here the options for creating a new storage account. Here, the first, you can see the Visual Studio Enterprise subscription, and then there is the resource group. So if you are already having a resource group, okay, so you need to have the storage account there itself. Okay, so like you want to deploy your applications or the databases there in the same resource groups, okay, you can use that. Or else also it will work fine. Okay, so it's not compulsory, like okay, in the same resource group you have to have the all the applications with the along with the storage account. So here I'm going to create a new resource group. Storage new. Okay, so this is my new storage resource group. Sorry, this is my new resource group for holding the storage account. And here have to give the storage account name. Okay, so it is, so the field can contain only lower cases, so we need to have the lower cases there. And then the region, so where in which region which is more closer to your users, okay, where you are deploying your application, so which is closer to that particular region, or your current your location, okay, where it is accessible. So this is as per your requirement, you can choose. So here I'm going to choose the North Europe. And here is the two tiers, okay, standard and premium. So this is based on again, yeah, okay, so here your requirement. So here I have selected the standard, and the redundancy here it is asking, okay, so the various types of redundancy locally, okay, so it is only for the locally. And then if it is a GRS, or if it is a zone redundant storage, or if it is a geo zone redundant storage, okay, can. And you can make like okay, make read access to data availability. So like so GRS is there, but RAGRS the option is not there. So how you can select RAGRS? By selecting the geo redundant storage and then select the tick check. Okay, so just click on this, and it will become the RAGRS. Then click on the advanced. So here you don't need to like change anything, so as it is you can use it. Then the networking part, So here it is for enable public access from all networks or enable public access from selected virtual networks. This is again, okay, so you are applying a kind of security for your storage account. Okay, so this is also again based on your requirement. You can so disable public access and use private access only for the storage account. So again, okay, so which kind of data you are storing there, you can choose accordingly. Then the data protection part. So here enable point in time or restore for the containers, or you want to like enable soft delete for blobs. Soft delete which will enable like by mistake, okay, or users deleted the data from the blob, okay, you can retain it by, okay, see here 7 days, okay, you can retain it by, so 7 is already given. Then enable soft delete for the containers as well, and enable soft delete for the file shares. So these all are again based on the requirement. Then come to the encryption. Encryption we will discuss, okay, when after completing that. Okay, so here two kinds of encryption types you can configure: Microsoft managed keys and customer managed keys. Microsoft managed keys, if you are selecting, by default Microsoft will give you a passkey to access the storage account, and customer managed keys you are creating your own keys by using the key vault service, and then you can use it for accessing the storage account. Blobs and files only. It enables the support for customer managed blobs and files only. So if you are selecting the customer managed key, so here it is selecting all service types like blobs, files, tables, and queues. So Microsoft managed keys, if you are selecting, okay, and then explicitly you can select all service types. Okay, so where you are selecting it, so this is based on again. Now, tags. Tags we are using for any kind of resources you are deploying in your Azure portal. You can see this option, tags. Okay, so this tags you can use for categorizing your resources. Okay, so this is actually it can easy for the billing administrator to view the consolidated billing by applying the same tag to multiple resources. Like for example, here name I'm giving like, okay, so this is for the department, okay, and here the value I'm giving IT or finance or accounts. Okay, so for this particular storage account, for which department it is, okay, and here all resources selected, or only private endpoint, and then storage account, or only virtual network, so or all resources selected. So this is, so whatever resources you are keeping in this storage account, okay, it will come in the department IT. Then you can provide the username, like, okay, so username also user. So here I'm just giving John. Okay, so again, so this particular storage account you are going to create, okay, so it belongs to the user John and the department IT. So in this way, the tags if you are creating, okay, so at the time of the billing, the consolidated view of the billing, users can view the billing administrator, so easily identify which resource, which department, from which users are having this much cost. Okay, so for that we are using tags, and tags we are using for all kinds of resources which we are going to deploy in your Azure portal. Then after that, review. Okay, so it is going for running the final validation. So if there is any errors or anything, so it will show here. After that, okay, after completing the validation successfully, then you go for creating it. So it will hardly take, okay, 1 or 2 minutes to complete the initialization of the storage account or creation of the storage account. Okay. So it's completed the deployment. I'm going to the resources. So this is the new storage account I have created, and here is the overview part of the storage account. And here, okay, the resource group where I have stored this. Okay, so storage new. So resource group, nothing like, okay, so it is a logical container, we can say. And here the replication, you can see read access geo redundant storage I have given, like, okay, gr is already selected, and then the I have checked the read access option as well. Then it is the standard tier, and where primary North Europe and West Europe. Okay, so whenever you are selecting geo redundant storage, so you should know, okay, what are the paired regions. Okay, so then only you have to select the region. So here for the North Europe, the paired region of the North Europe is West Europe. So it is replicated to this. So here the primary region is North Europe, and it is replicated to the secondary region, that is West Europe. And the subscription ID, date, and disk state, okay, voila. And the tags you can see over here: department, IT, and user John. Here are the services. Under the data storage section, here are the services. You can see the 4 services which we have discussed. So containers, file shares, queues, and tables. So click on the containers. So if I want to create a new container, my new container one, so it is taken, and here the access level. Okay, I can select any, okay, based on the requirement, private, blob, or container access level. So if I'm selecting private, so no anonymous access provided. So if I'm going to I click on the advanced, the encryption scope will, okay, so you don't need to select, like, okay, so if you want to, okay, so based on the requirement again, use this encryption scope for all blobs in the container, or enable version level immutability support only. So I'm not selecting any of this. Okay, just click on creating. So here the storage account created. So this is the storage account. So in that, sorry, not the storage account, the container. So container I have created, and then here nothing is there. So we can upload the blobs. So you can click on browse for files, and any file you can select from here. Okay, so I'm taking any picture kind of game. Yeah, for example, this picture I'm taking here. Okay, and it is a blob, and the block size. Okay, and it is where it is selecting, it is hot. Okay, so if frequently I'm using, so, and if folder is there, upload to folder, and key value. So here also you can provide the index tags and encryption, use existing default container scope. Okay, so here I am keeping all these options, whatever it is available default. So I'm keeping all that as it is, and then click on upload. So it is uploaded successfully. So you can see, so here one blob I have uploaded, and it is having a picture. So this is the way you can create storage account, and then after that creating a containers, and then adding or uploading a blob. Now the next topic is configure storage security. Okay, we're going to discuss review storage security strategies, shared access signatures, URI, and SAS parameters. So, review storage account strategies. So, first, storage service encryption. So, all data returned to Azure storage account storage is automatically encrypted by using Azure storage encryption. And then there is authentication with Azure AD and RBAC roles. So Azure Active Directory and role-based access control, that is RBAC, are supported for Azure storage for both resource management operations and the data operations. So assigning RBAC roles scoped to an Azure storage account to security principles and use Azure AD to authorize resource management operations. Then data in transfer or data in transit. So data can be secured in transit between the application and Azure by using client-side encryption, HTTPS, SMB 3.0, all that. Then disk encryption. Operating system disk and data disk used by Azure virtual machines also can be encrypted by using the Azure disk encryption. And the one is shared access signature. So the shared access signature, we are using it for delegating the accessibility of the data objects in Azure storage account, which can be granted by using a SAS or shared access signature. Then shared key authorization relies on the Azure storage account, access keys, and other parameters to produce an encrypted signature string. Then anonymous access to containers and blobs. Okay, this is as per again. Can optionally you can make the blob resources public at the container or the blob level. So two ways you can provide the accessibility, like for the blobs or the containers. So a public container or blob is accessible to any user for anonymous read access. Now, how to create the shared access signatures? A shared access signature is a uniform resource identifier. So here we can say it is a URI that grants restricted access rights to various Azure storage resources. So here SAS is a very secure way to share your storage resources without compromising your keys. So you can provide an SAS to clients who should not have the accessibility to your storage account. So here only for a particular duration of time you are providing the accessibility of your data to a group of users or a user by using the storage by using the shared access signature. So here when you are creating when you are generating a storage shared access signature, you can provide it, you can use it as account key signing method, okay, or else use delegation key and provide the permission, okay, which type of permissions you are providing to access that particular data, read or write. Okay, so that means if you are providing read, only users can view, or write permission if you are providing, so users can edit as well. Then start and expiry date or time. So start, that is the date, and then the time you can provide, and then the expiry. So expiry until when and until what time, okay, until which date, okay, the particular users can use this data which you are providing through shared access signatures. So here the coordinated universal time, the time also you can provide. And allowed IP addresses. So here, what are the allowed IP addresses you can provide for the shared access signatures and the protocols as well. Then click on generate SAS token and URL. So after generating, so SAS is a signed URI which points to one or more storage resources. It consists of a storage resource URI and the SAS token. So here, this is the URI, the definition of the URI after generating. So it looks like this. So it is having a resource URI and storage version. So storage version, this is the resource URI, okay, until .NET, and then storage version, then that is SV. Okay, then storage service, SS is there, then start time, expiry time, resource. Okay, so that is storage start time. Okay, and then the storage expiry time, and the resource and the permissions, IP ranges. If you have given the IP ranges also will show, and then the protocol. Okay, so that is HTTPS we have given, then the signature. After that the signature will start. Okay, so it includes the parameters of the resource URI, storage services, versions, services, resource type, start time, expiry time, resource permissions, IP range, protocols, signature, etc. Determine the storage service encryption.
Hi, Sena. Just to
Yes.
let you know, we have, let's say, 5 minutes. Okay, just to try to keep the time under control. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. 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 Thank you. Thank you, Jackson, for that. Now the next is how to determine the storage service encryption. So Azure Storage Service storage encryption for data. At rest protects your data by ensuring your organizational security and the compliance commitments are met. So the encryption and the decryption process happen automatically. So because your data is secured default, so you don't need to modify your code or the applications. So it is encrypted through 256-bit AES encryption, so it's enabled for all new and existing storage accounts, and it cannot be disabled. And it is transparent to users. So already we have seen, okay, so we can provide the encryption by using the Microsoft managed keys or customer managed keys, which is in the demonstration I have shown. Okay, whenever you are selecting Microsoft managed keys, so Microsoft will generate keys, and the customer managed keys, if you are selecting, then the customer will generate the keys by using the key vault. Okay, so these are the entire things, but here, okay, we didn't discuss about the table storage, queue storage, and the file storage. So later in any other events, if you are getting, so we will discuss that too. So here I have given a brief discussion about storage accounts, the services, which is about the blob services, and complete description about the blob service, and how to create a container service, and how to upload the blobs. Any questions or anything is
No.
there?
Yeah. All good. I was checking here the chat box. Yeah, everything is fine. And thanks very much for all the information in regards to to the Azure storage. Yeah, there are so many different types and so on. But yeah, anyway, that was a good presentation, and I'm sure people can uh, go back to the YouTube channel and can review the video if they need.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Jackson.
Okay, thanks very much for spending the last hour with us, and I hope to see you soon.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, everybody, I just need 2 minutes to switch the devices in here, and then we are starting the next presentation. Actually, myself is starting the next presentation where I will go and talk all about the endpoint protection. Okay, give me 2 minutes, and then I will be back to start the presentation. Okay, everybody, welcome back. I just needed 2 minutes just to switch here in between my devices. And now the next presentation is going to be all about how we can protect different endpoints. I have a few slides to share and loads of demo just to make the presentation a bit more dynamic. And then I will present a bit between slides, and we'll switch in to present lots of demos as well. Anyway, if you don't know me, I'm Jackson Felden. At the moment, I'm working as a senior cloud security consultant at Avanade, and my day-to-day is to visit, let's say, complex enough clients and improve the security on their infrastructure. I'm a Microsoft MVP on security in Azure, and if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, yeah, just search for me on Jackson Felden. I have a YouTube channel as well. That's the place where I share all my, let's say, day-to-day findings, all my learning. Instead to keep to myself, I just share with whatever you guys want to learn. You can take from there. The agenda I have planned for today. First slide is just to talk about what are the challenges today when we need to protect different devices, and then I will jump straight away and run a quick demo to show a ransomware in action, a ransomware attack in action, and then a kind of quick overview on Defender for Endpoint. And then, in order to explain and show how it works, I will talk quickly about the onboarding, and then how to set up the settings, and then I will run another ransomware attack, this time from a protected device, and then I will show as well how you can go and view all the alerts, analyze all the alerts from the security portal, and then I will jump into the Sentinel portal as well. Okay. Anyway, let's get started. And if you have any question, please feel free to type them on the chat box. I will do a kind of presentation and moderation at the same time. I have a second screen here with where I can check the questions. And if you have anything to ask, just feel free. Okay. Before I start, I've been now for a quite while recording different videos on Defender for Endpoint. I have, I think, 30 in total on my YouTube channel. And I've been recording now for a good while, 100% free course. Here is the structure. But as I said, as I progress on different projects and on my learning as well, whatever I'm learning, I share in there. And if you want to do a kind of good deep dive into the Defender for Endpoint, yeah, just find my channel. You can see from here. Just find me on YouTube, and you can benefit from all those recordings I've been making available. Okay. Anyway, when it comes to the device protection, these days can be challenging, very challenging enough. As you can see, these are all the numbers coming from different slides from Microsoft. The first one, yeah, there are let's say 7 million unique threats emerging per hour. And then, in order to have a good tool to remediate and to be on top of those tools, the tool, whatever you are using, must be very dynamic and powered by the cloud. Interesting enough, as you can see in here, 46% of the compromised systems are actually, they don't have a malware. They don't have a malware that was infected. They can come from different, let's say, fileless attack from macros and other things as well. Good spike, yeah, especially since the pandemic was the time when the ransomware became very popular, and then from there, eventually now, no way back, is growing all the time. And that's a big one. Between 50 to 60% of the attacks, they come from macros and different scripts. This is why, as I will show in better words in a few minutes, it's very, very important for you to make sure you have the ASR, the attack surface reduction rules, implemented, and they can remediate, that problem. And then still a kind of headache for any big, especially big company, when it comes in terms of making sure all the patchings for the operating system and for every single application are always updated, because any missing patch could lead a hole on the system, and then this is exactly what the attackers are looking for. And of course, in these days, a very dynamic environment as well, where resources are, have been added all the time dynamically from the cloud, on-prem, and so on. And it's challenging enough in order to try to keep on top of everything. This is why Microsoft is working hard enough in terms of releasing all the Defender family, Defender for endpoint, Defender for identity, Defender for container, and there are so many variations, is exactly to keep on top of this ever, let's say, dynamic, let's say, environment we are living today. And the last one is in regards to the device platform. Of course, we are not using only Windows. We need to manage in a, let's say, safe way Windows and iOS and Mac devices. It's pretty much, anything. This is why by the time you are picking whatever the endpoint tool to do the protection, make sure it's a multi-platform, because otherwise you will end up having, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 different tools to manage the endpoint. Anyway, now let me dive straight into a quick demo. Probably you have heard about, or you came across, hopefully not, just on the theory about the WannaCry. Let me just quickly run the WannaCry to see how things can get really bad if the WannaCry gets infected in a device. And then later on, I will do the same in a fully protected device to show the difference in having Defender for Endpoint in there. Okay, now if I just quickly jump into my VMs in here, on my environment, let me jump into, this device here. Okay, this is a Windows 7, and then of course the only way I was able to have the WannaCry available in here, and I was, now we'll be able to run the WannaCry, is by disabling, by downgrading the security levels on this device. Please remember the name, at least at the beginning, the ED01EDFB, because later on when I will show all the alerts, okay, we can point out for the exit that came, okay, in here. Now, if I simply, let me just try to run this guy. Oh yeah, before that, as you can see, I have a few files in here. If I go to my documents, I have, some, let's say, my data files are in there. And now let me just try to run quickly this WannaCry in here. Let me just double click and then let me run. Yeah, now what's happening, it's not looking too good. Lots of files have been now presented here to me. Please readme.txt, some other files in there. If I go back to my documents, as you can see, my files, they have been encrypted, okay, via WannaCry. And if I, just double click in this file, if I'm wondering what's happening with my device, here now are a few, instructions what I should do. As you could see, the background screen has, has changed. And there you go. Now the WannaCry application, okay, is running here on my device. That would be really, a terrible thing that would happen for any organization. Here are the instructions, what I should do in order to get my files back. Here is the time I have, and then it's going to cost 300, 300 American dollar. Here's the, Bitcoin and so on. And if I want to contact, the guys, I could click in here, but that again would be, a terrible thing. Anyway, just to quickly show if the device is not in a good protection level, this is what's happened and can happen with any device in any organization, big or small, it doesn't matter. Anyway, of course, to avoid that in spreading, what I did in here on my device, I'm using Hyper-V, and this device is fully isolated. I kind of, disconnected from the network because I don't want that to affect my other, my other devices. Anyway, that's the quick thing that would happen for a device when it's not protected, or if the protection level is not that great. Okay, don't need this VM anymore. Now let me jump to a second device. Okay, this device here is a different story, is the way it should be, is a Windows 10 fully patched, fully protected by Defender for Endpoint. As you can see, I have the device, the communication here is running well. And the only reason the WannaCry is still in here is because I made an exception for this folder to have in here. Now, if I try to run, let me just drag and drop to the desktop. If I try to click in there, yeah, and try to run, as you can see, now thanks to the whole protection I have on this device, the WannaCry couldn't run. As you can see here on the top, the payload will get read. The Defender for Endpoint will delete that payload in a few seconds. And now let me just jump back to my presentation to go over a few slides, and then I will jump back to the demo to show where is the place where I can do all the configuration and do the whole analysis when it comes to the alerts, okay? But the good thing is, yeah, if you have a device like me, Windows 10, fully updated and fully protected by Defender for Endpoint, and then I don't want to say it's impossible for anybody to get in, but we can at least make it really, really hard for the bad actors. Okay, if I go back now just quickly to my slide, let me just run a quick intro when it comes to the Defender for Endpoint. Microsoft has in here, in these days, more than different 50 categories when we are talking about security, and those 50 plus categories are kind of packed into the 6 different products. The one I want to talk today is the Microsoft Defender, but in here we could be talking about Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Identity, and Defender for Container. There's a huge variation. But for now, what I have prepped for today is to talk about Defender for Endpoint. The first message I want to share is there are still lots of people out there thinking Defender for Endpoint is a AV, is an antivirus solution. Of course, the antivirus solution is kind of part of this product, but this is only one of those 6 different pillars. The first one is all about threat and vulnerability. From here, we can have a very good understanding where we stand when it comes to all the exposure levels, all the device security levels, security score, sorry. What are the recommendations Microsoft provides for me on my tenant in order to make the environment safer and so on. The next one is the ASR, or the Attack Surface Reduction. Here, basically, there are 16 different rules. And then from here, as I said I think on the slide before, between 50 to 60% of the ransomware attacks, they start via macro. And yeah, this is why there are some rules where we can disable Office in creating child domains, child processes. We can disable Acrobat Reader in created child processes, because those child processes, they are able to run a PowerShell script that eventually will inject different macros and things on my system. And then we have the AV itself. Here's the next generation AV, because it's fully powered by the cloud that comes with artificial intelligence, it comes with the machine learning, and so on. Talking about especially machine learning and artificial intelligence, we need to move to the next one. That is the EDR. The EDR, or the Endpoint Detection and Response. Here is all about behavior monitor. Behavior monitor. Eventually, the Defender for Endpoint will kind of start tracking what is the way each device works in terms of the processes running, how much memory those processes are using, how much CPU they are using, if they create additional processes or not. And eventually, if there is a process that is not running on the way it should be, following the pattern Microsoft already kind of understood from the past experience, eventually the EDR, in addition to the AV, can take remediation actions to eventually block that malicious process in running. They kind of all run together. It means even eventually if the antivirus is disabled, or not likely, but maybe is not running well, we still have a second layer of protection done by the EDR. And then we have the the auto investigation and remediation. This is absolutely brilliant because especially in a kind of enterprise, a complex environment where we could have dozens or maybe hundreds of alerts coming every few minutes, to have analysts trying to tackle every single alert and then deciding what should be done is not let's say efficient enough. This is why with the auto investigation remediation, Microsoft will do that work, and then depending the configuration we set, we can even allow the Defender for Endpoint in closing the alerts by themselves. If Microsoft does the analysis, does all the remediation, double check everything, and nothing was left behind in regards to that attack, there is no need to leave the alert open, and Microsoft can close that for us. And the last one, if eventually you need some additional information, there are some dodgy alerts and you are not too sure if you should close that alert yourself, you are kind of doubting, no problem, we can engage with the Microsoft engineers to allow them to come to our tenant and then do a deep dive analysis if needed, in order to just to make sure we don't leave anything behind. Anyway, but in order for us to have the devices fully protected and then kind of, taking advantages of those 6 pillars, the step number 1, of course, we need to do the onboarding. We need to, as the name suggests, onboard them into Defender for Endpoint. The good news from Microsoft in here, there are so many ways we can do the onboarding. And even if right now I'm only talking about Windows devices, Windows 10, Windows 11, the Windows Server 2012, 2016, and so on, we can use any of those methods. If I have a small lab environment, I could, just run a local script and then to have things done. Eventually, if I need to onboard hundreds or thousands of devices, of course, I don't want to run that in device by device. And then I could take advantage from the automation and use grow policies, or I could use Intune into the MDM and so on. If your organization is already using Microsoft Configuration Manager, no problem at all. We can do the onboarding from there. I'm not going to kind of, read all of them. But as you can see, whatever the device you have, the flavor, if it's a Mac, and then we have all of these options to do the onboarding. If I want to onboard Linux, we have all of those methods and so on. And then you need to kind of maybe test and analyze each of them to see what is more suitable. That will give you a better automation, let's say, experience when you need to do the onboarding. Just if I pause for a second, after doing the onboarding, usually is quick enough, usually takes between 5 minutes to maybe, 15 minutes based on my experience. But after the onboarding, and then if I go into the portal, okay, especially if you are new, you need to go over the security security.microsoft.com, and then from there, here on the left, if you click on devices, and then as you can see, of course, this is my my own lab. I have only 11 devices, and then from here I can see now all my devices. If they are, the exposure level is medium, high, or low. I can see if they are active or inactive, and so on. For, the quick demo I ran before was on my, let me actually just double check. There you go, 1026. The quick demo I ran a few seconds ago was on device 1026. And now if I click in here, I can have a kind of good understanding what's happening. So far, so good. All the security intelligence, okay, this seems to be updated. Okay, updated enough. They are green. The AV is active. And then eventually, if I go to the incidents and alerts, if I click in there, I could now quickly see it's not really looking good. And then I can see and find out WannaCry. Actually, the good news is, the WannaCry was prevented. It means Microsoft managed to block the WannaCry in here. In a few seconds, I will come back to give better information. But that's the way when I'm talking about onboarding, that's the way it works. The Defender eventually is added into my device inventory, and then from here now I have loads of nice information to do the day-to-day management. Now, if I go back to here, of course, we still need to talk about the configuration, because is a kind of huge flexibility we have in terms of how I want Defender for Endpoint to behave on each device. I want to, eventually, if there is a threat, I want Microsoft to delete that threat, like the WannaCry. I want to get rid straight away and delete the threat, or maybe I want the threat to be moved to the quarantine, leave there, for 30 days, just in case if I need to bring back, of course, not WannaCry, but maybe, another file, leave there for 30 days. And then after 30 days, the system will delete, that file if there is no action. But that configuration, there are two parts. The first one is what I call the backend settings, and here are the general settings that will affect the whole tenant. For example, if I want to have the automated investigation or not, if I want to allow my security team, when doing the analysis, to connect the devices via live response, and eventually, run some additional PowerShell commands and so on. And whatever I do here is applied for my entire, let's say, tenant. And then I have what I call the settings, where I need to deploy on each device. The example I gave you a few seconds ago, I want the files, whatever the malicious files, not to be deleted straight away, but I want them to be moved into the quarantine. There you go. And then if I'm using Linux, I need to set that configuration into this md-atp managed JSON file. This is, for Linux. If I want to set the configuration on my Windows devices, then again, I can, use whatever the option I want. Could be via Grow Policy, could be via Configuration Manager, could be via MEM or Microsoft Endpoint Manager, and so on. There is no right and wrong. I would say, whatever you can pick, anything that is a cloud, like, MEM is much better than Grow Policy. But again, each organization can pick whatever works better. Okay, now let me again pause for a second on my slide and let me show, where I can do that configuration. Starting from the backend configuration, this one here, if I go back to my security.microsoft.com, here's the place, and then I need to go here to the left. If I click on settings, okay, click in there. And then, here I can set different things. I'm looking to set up the endpoint. If I click on endpoint, there you go. Now, under the advanced settings, here are the options, as I already said a few times. Here are the options where I can disable or enable, and it will affect my entire, let's say, devices already onboarded. If I want to, for example, allow or block file, if I want, to enable the tamper protection, if I want to show user, some additional details, and of course, I'm not going to read, all of them. But as I said, to keep my configuration as safest, as possible, I decided to enable, all of them, to take advantage of the, all the security resources Microsoft provides. But anyway, this is only one part. The second bit is, okay, how can I actually deploy the configuration to, this device in here, to eventually, make sure no bad actors, no bad malicious files can be run in here. Okay, to do that, we have a couple of options, as I was talking about in here. Let me show quickly how and where I can do that via MEM, and then how I can do the same configuration via Grow Policy. And then later I will explore Sentinel and other bits as well. Anyway, if I go back to here, the place to go now is under, I need to go to endpoint.microsoft.com. Okay, that's the place. If you have been, let's say, managing Intune, this is not kind of new for you. But yeah, under the endpoint.microsoft.com, the place to go is here on the left over endpoint security. Just let me click in there. And then, yeah, there you go. There are a bit of option in here. The option is under the security. Okay, and then here now, if I click on create policy, okay, click in there. Now I have different options. If I want to create an AV policy for Mac, for Linux, or for Windows 10, 11, and servers, and so on. And then what I need to do, click on Windows Server. Now in here, I have the options to set up the antivirus, or I can set the exclusions, or what's the security experience when it comes to the Defender kind of desktop in there, and so on. And then what I need to do is, okay, let me stick first with antivirus, and then I can just click on create, provide a name, for now, because I have that already created. Okay, test. Of course, that's not a terrible name, but anyway, click in there, and then here basically are all the options now I can enable. There is not really wrong and right in terms of what are the options in here. Of course, some are really crucial, very important, like allow behavior monitor. Oh my goodness, that is really important to benefit from the EDR. We really should have that enabled. Allow cloud protection, that's definitely we should enable as well. If you're not too sure, you can always just go over here to have a bit of information. But again, there are so many options in here, and you need to, if you are deploying a project, just make sure you can deploy the most suitable configuration for whatever the company you are deploying. Click on next. Now is the time I could add some tags. Yeah, I want to skip that. And then finally, here is the place where I can decide if this policy are going to be applied, this policy will be applied for every single device of my organization, all users, or in here, I could select groups. And then, yeah, you could have groups for pilot devices, another one for, I don't know, Windows 10 devices, another one for servers, and so on. Anyway, let me just abort so far. When the configuration is done, okay, it takes a few minutes to populate or to have that configuration pushed to the devices. Now what I can do, I did that already just to buy a bit of time. If I go to my AV policy I already created, and then from here, now I can see, get a bit of information, how many devices got that configuration, if there is any error or not, and if I need quickly to kind of review actually what are the settings I have deployed, I can see in here. Okay, now if I click on view reports, click in here, and then eventually, yeah, there you go. On my server 2012, server 2016, and server 2019, yeah, those policies have been deployed, okay, successfully. That's, actually good news, and those devices are in a good protection state, I would say. Okay, anyway, that's of course, I could now spend hours and hours going over, each of the policy, but that's the option where you can go and set up the configuration. Now let me show something really new. Okay, it came, I think, second week of July. Companies around the world, they were complaining with Microsoft, saying, why we don't have all the configuration needed in a single portal, why I need to go to the backend configuration into security.microsoft.com, and then in order to push the configuration over my Windows devices, I need to go to the endpoint.microsoft.com and so on. Anyway, I'm really delighted and more than happy to share Microsoft eventually now added in here. If I go over the endpoints and then configuration manager, now endpoint security policies, yeah, this is the option. If I click in there, and then, it's not a big surprise, exactly the policies I have created on my endpoint security, okay, they are here. Okay, the policies are the same. I've been looking at all the options. They are pretty much the same, but the advantage now, we have a single portal where we land in there and we can get everything sorted from a single place without kind of moving different portals. I know, sounds very simple, but all the companies around the world, they were really asking that for Microsoft. And then same story, if I click in here now, just have a better view. The interface is much friendly. Straight away in here I can see how many success deployments, if there is any error or so on. Same story, I can now click on applied devices to see what are the devices affected by that configuration and so on. And every time, just to let you know, when we make changes on the policy, Microsoft says it can take up to kind of 90 minutes for some configuration to be deployed. If we don't have those 90 minutes to wait, what I can do is I can now go to the device itself, go to devices. Now let me just get one of those servers. I think the server 2012-05, yeah, if I have good memory, was one of them. Now, if I go here on the top corner, I should see, 3 dots, click in there, and then as you can see, policy sync. Okay, if I click in here, first. Okay, now Microsoft is saying, yeah, we should get the thing sorted in 10 minutes instead 90 minutes. Okay, now I can confirm, and that's it. Okay, don't need to wait. It's not exactly 90 minutes, but up to 90 minutes. Now I can shrink that to 10 minutes. Okay. Anyway, that's the story when it comes to the policy management. And the good news as well, I'm really delighted if I go in here and click on Linux, okay, and then I could see all the policies, or actually I can click in here and then select, I can create a V policy for Linux devices, okay, and I can create for Mac as well. Okay, this is really cool, really cool. I've been waiting that for so long, because before this option, we had to go and use, other Linux tools in terms of to do the automation and to push the policies, over the Linux devices. Now we have in there. Okay, that's, yeah, I'm kind of really happy with that. Okay, that's great. Just a quick demo. Oh yeah, now eventually, if your company is still, most likely, big organization, are still using Grow Policy, yeah, no problem at all. We can do that via Grow Policy as well. I have here a domain controller, and then if you go over Server Manager, then if I click on Tools, next step is over Grow Policy Management. If I click in there, and yeah, just to buy a bit of time, I already created a bunch of Grow policies. This is my main one, General Settings. If I click in there, of course, if you are new on Grow policy, what you need to do is right-click and then create a new GPO and link the GPO to this OU. I've done that already. Now what I can do, just to give you a bit of information on that, right-click and then click on Edit. And yeah, there you go. Now, if I go here on the left, sorry, not preference, policies, and then administrative templates, and then finally, maybe let me just maximize. Yeah, and here, Microsoft Defender Antivirus. Yeah, there you go. And now if I maximize, I have all the options in here as well, from the real-time protection, as quickly I showed from MEM. If I want to turn on or turn off the real-time protection, if I want to enable, disable the behavior monitor, and so on, what are the remediation levels I want to have, if I want to scan if I want to schedule any full scan, quick scan, once a week, every day, every morning at 3 a.m., if I want to enable the catch-up quick scan, the catch-up full scan, again, I could stay now for the next, I don't know, maybe 2 hours talking about, can you see, talk about all of those options we have here available. But anyway, just to give, a good understanding. the way. At the end, it really doesn't matter, what are the tool you are using, if you are using MEM, or if you are using security, or the security portal, or if you are using the grow policy. The only thing is each tool might have some kind of differences when it comes to the available settings. If you're looking for a very, very specific setting, maybe it's not available yet on MEM, but it could be available already here on Grow Policy. Then you need to kind of, deal with that. But for the kind of basic day-to-day policies, when it comes to, I don't know, AV and scan times and remediation levels, yeah, they are pretty much available, whatever the tool you want. Okay. Anyway, that's pretty much, from the configuration, what I wanted to give a kind of, quick understanding about the backend configuration, and then the settings you need to push for each individual device. Now, yeah, let me, before talk about Sentinel, let me just do a kind of hopefully a nice tour into the security portal, a couple of interesting things you can do. Now, if I go back to my devices here, or device inventory, sometimes takes a bit of time in order to get all the information. And then from there, especially if you are dealing with an environment with kind of, thousands of devices, and what we can do is here on the right, sorry, just click on filter, and then I can say, I want to see only devices with high, when the risk is high risk or medium risk, or I want to see all the devices, the active devices. The inactive are the devices already, I don't know, maybe gone for more than a year on my, a year is too much, more than 6 months, maybe on my organization, so on. The other thing very useful, in my case, I have deployed tags, and then I want to see only my critical servers. I don't want to see any Windows 10 and so on. Then I can filter by tag, click in there. Now, instead to see, thousands of devices, I'm only seeing the critical servers, okay, on my infrastructure. Let me just go back and there. I want to see all my devices and so on. Okay, again, now if I click in a single device, if I click in here, as I was explaining a few seconds ago, I have some options in here, very useful when it comes to the timeline. Timeline, as the name suggests, absolutely everything that is happening on that device, I can catch from here. And if you need to do a kind of really a deep dive investigation in a compromised device, yeah, we can filter in here what is the kind of the time I want to filter, maybe last week or last day or the last 2 hours and so on. And then from here now, as you can see, every single, pretty much second by second, I can see. If I click in here, I can get some additional information as well. And again, if it has been a kind of, interesting attack in that device, I can see exactly what is the PowerShell script that run, what is the application from what folder, what is the user. Yeah, pretty much, everything. Next, very interesting as well, I can see what are the security recommendations for this device in order to make the protection even better. And then from here, as you can see, yeah, not that great. I haven't updated the Google Chrome. I still need to update the .NET framework. Ooh, there is a 0 day there as well. Anyway, here are all the bits I should remediate. They can be configuration, okay? For example, the ASR rules, I need to implement the configuration, or could be updates in here as well. If I go to the software inventory, very handy as well, in a quick way to see every single piece of software installed on that device, okay, is in here. And really important, oh, yeah, not, oh my goodness, not that great. Of course, some things I leave in the purpose here just to have some information to share. As you can see, the security, let's say, update from February, okay, was missing on my device, specifically for not the OS, but for the .NET, okay, is in there. Okay, as I will show in my next demo, there are some really interesting things I can do from here. Let me just refresh this page. And then from here, if the device is really not looking good, could be, attacked by ransomware, what I could do is quickly click on those three dots and then eventually isolate the device. As the name suggests, the isolation means a few firewall rules will be implemented on that device, blocking any sort of communication with that device in the local network. The only exception is to allow that device to still talk to the Microsoft kind of, backend data center in order for us from the portal to actually release, when the time is right, for us to release this device from the isolation. But you could be wondering, okay, but and then if there is a ransomware attack in, I don't know, 10 devices or 100 devices, and then it means I need to go to one by one and push the isolation button automatically? Of course not. To do that, we could benefit from the Power Automate, and then, via Power Automate to tackle the isolation in those 100 affected devices. Or if you have Sentinel, we can use the Sentinel automation. That is actually much better, and I will show now in a few seconds. Before that, before dive into the Sentinel, and then just to kind of bring everything to a single place where with the automation, I can make, with a single button, with a single click, have everything sorted. But before that, let me just quickly explore. Here on the left is, I can see all the alerts. If I click in there, because I run the ransomware in a few minutes ago on my Windows 10 26, as you can see, the WannaCry, there is an alert here. Before that, I run the WannaCry again, and I run the WannaCry as well on my server 2016-06. If I want to understand a little bit more about the alert, the best thing to do is click on the alert itself. And then from here, I have the story, the alert story. I can see all the processes and, pretty much anything that is part of that attack. And then here I can see exactly the place from where the WannaCry tried to run. From my friend user Lee Gu, okay, from the desktop, and here is the exe file ed01 and so on. Okay, I can see from there. And because I set the configuration for everything to be quarantine, okay, I have the chance, I could go into the quarantine and release that file from there. That actually would be a really a terrible idea because it's WannaCry. But the good news, okay, the actually excellent news is the following. From here, I can see the status is prevented. Okay, the software, as you could see before, tried to run, but because it was, malicious, Microsoft managed to, as you can see in here, Microsoft managed to eventually quarantine, okay, that file, and the remediation status is success. Okay, this is why, this alert was closed automatically because I've set the configuration. I'm happy with that. Microsoft, managed to block the remediation happens in the level expected, level, and then I don't need to be worried with that, at all. Okay, that's the way we can work. If you are wondering what is the difference between alerts and incidents, okay, the easiest way for me to explain is the following. Incident is a collection of alerts, because eventually if the WannaCry was run in 100 devices, I need to go device by device to analyze, and here is better. All the how can I say, all the alerts related to each other, they are grouped, okay, together. In this case, I run before the WannaCry on Windows 10 26 and my server 2016, and then they were put together in a single alert. The advantage I have, I could come here now, and whatever the remediation I take will affect all the alerts under that. Another really nice thing is if I click on the incident, I have in here what is the incident graph. Okay, from here I can see how many devices are kind of related to that incident. I can see what are the files, registry key, or any all the elements related to the attack will be here in this incident graph. And here I can see as well, it was fully resolved. And then I have, again, same view I had before. Of course, because it's a WannaCry incident, or let's say it's a ransomware incident, I really kind of, want to see what are the sets related to this incident. In this case, if eventually WannaCry try to run in 100 devices, I will see all the devices in here. If there is any user related to that incident, any mailboxes and so on, all the pieces Microsoft will grab and put together, okay, in here. That is a peace of mind for us, especially when doing investigation, to get to know the places I need to check. And then here again, one more time, what are the evidence? Again, could be files, could be registry key, could be different things. And in this case, is the file, okay, coming from those two devices, okay. Anyway, that's the bit from the Defender for Endpoint itself throughout the security.microsoft.com portal. It means if you buy the license for Defender for Endpoint, or maybe you have the license already, if you have a Microsoft 365 E5, you have the license already. But especially for medium size and, let's say, much bigger organization, we, just the security.portal to have the incidents here is not, what we really want. The best thing to do then is, let me just go for a quick intro in here. And then the best thing to do is for us to have a proper SIEM system. Okay, SIEM, as you can see, stands for Security Information and Event Management, combined with the security orchestrated automated response. And now let me show a magic button where I can get things sorted, much easier. The beauty of having a SIEM, of course, there are some other competitors out there. I'm using here Sentinel, is all my security tools, they will be feeding information to a single location. Okay, as you can see in here, all the Microsoft Defender products, all my security center, Azure AD, of course, I can add my third-party elements, proxy servers, firewall, and so on. All the alerts come to a single place. And then the beauty of that is we can benefit from something called fusion detection. And the fusion detection is a powerful built-in tool into Sentinel that can understand and kind of provide ransomware patterns. Okay, as I can see in here, eventually was a suspected user attack. Somebody here tried to run. There is an active Mimikatz running, somewhere, and there is a suspicious PowerShell command. This is really not looking too good. And based on all the artificial intelligence and machine learning, all the power of the cloud, Microsoft can flag that as a possible ransomware attack. Okay, and then now let me jump into the demo where we can then benefit from the automation to get things sorted in a single, pretty much, in a single click or in a few clicks. Okay, anyway, now what I want to show is the following. If I leave my security.microsoft.com, and as you already know, I have all my alerts, incidents, everything in here. As I told you before, I could jump into the device and eventually force an isolation from there. But instead of doing that, what I can do is let me dive into, okay, again, if you're new, portal.azure.com. And then in here, if you're new, I can, just type Sentinel, and then go for Microsoft Sentinel. Of course, if you don't, if you have a kind of, blank subscription, you need to click and then create, all the Sentinel infrastructure. Of course, I did that already to buy a bit of time. And then in here now, I have the beauty of that. If I click on incidents, okay, if I click in there, just to give a bit of more information, from the last 30 days, I have all my incidents, okay, in here. And the beauty is, as you can see, I have things coming from Microsoft 365 Defender. I have things coming from the Defender for Endpoint. I have things coming, alerts coming from the Defender for Identity, and so on. Okay, different tools, as I was showing in the previous tool, different places, but all now the incidents are in a single place. And as you can see, multiple threats here from ransomware, sorry. And yeah, if I click in there, I can see all the devices related to that threat. Okay, in my case, because I've been kind of, playing quite a lot with my Windows 10, 26, 23, my Windows Server, and all the other bits. Now what I can do is click on View Full Details. And of course, guys, probably I don't need to tell you, when we are talking about Azure, it's not for free. By the time you create a subscription and you add Azure in there, all the alerts are coming to Azure, and then of course Azure needs to store that information, and then you will pay, for all the information coming and for the storage as well. Okay, and here, as you can see, today is July 3rd. I have the alerts in here. Okay, if I click, for example, on the WannaCry, full description, Microsoft is doing a brilliant work in terms of, adding loads of information in here, all the description, all the entries. Again, please remember the entries are all the files, registry keys, devices, and so on are in here. And then, very important, what are the remediation steps to get that thing, sorted. In here, I can assign this alert, as I did already for Alex. I can say this alert, it comes as new. I can set, as active. I could close the alert, and it was initially set as medium, but because it's ransomware, I changed to high. Okay, if I click on entries, as I was saying, I have all the servers, devices, the hash files, the files itself. As you can see, everything's in here. Okay, let's say I really had enough. Okay, let's say it's a ransomware, WannaCry, and what I want to do is the following. I could have things happening automatically. For example, if there are, I don't know, alerts related to WannaCry or malware, if the alert is, the severity level is high, I could have the runbook running automatically. Okay, I didn't want to have, everything too automatically, because otherwise I wouldn't, have the chance to show. In my case, I didn't do everything automatically, but what I did was the following. I already created a few run books, and one of the run book is to isolate my device. If I quickly go back to, I don't need this device anymore. If I go back to this guy here, okay, as you can see, the device is running well. There is a ping, everything is running. The connectivity is running fine. Now, if I go here, what I can say, no, that's really dangerous. Let's isolate every single device related to that incident. Could be 2 devices, could be 1,000 devices, really doesn't matter. And then now I can manually run that thing from here. If I go back to my device, if my lab is still working well, now Azure, of course, needs to communicate with my device. As you can see, yeah, I didn't do anything, didn't click anything. As you could see, eventually the Microsoft service contacted my device. Firewall rules, they were changed, and my device now is fully isolated, or I could say almost fully isolated. The only communication that is still in place is the communication between my device and the Microsoft security backend service. Okay, now what I should do is, let's say, let me go back to here. That's the device 23. Let's say, the team did the remediation, or maybe at least, check the device. There is no registry key left behind. The WannaCry exe file was deleted. The device is fully remediated. We are happy with the results, and that's everything's looking good. Now, of course, when the security team is happy and thinks the time is okay to bring that device back to the network, yeah, no problem. What I can do, just click on those devices. Yeah, as you can see, is still as isolate device. Sometimes what I need to do, because the button I'm looking now is the release from the isolation. Okay, then what I'm going to do, I need to just refresh one more time. Sometimes, it takes a few minutes for that. Let me just now, okay, now hopefully back in business. If I click on those three dots again, yeah, there you go. Now I have the button release from isolation. And then let me click in here. Of course, I could have, other automation to release all the devices from the, from the automation, from the isolation. But again, I just want to show the step by step. Okay, let's say remediated. I'm happy, it's fully remediated. And then I can click on confirm. Now, if I jump quickly back to my device, okay, I didn't do anything. As you can see, by the time I released from the isolation, Microsoft again was able to talk to my Windows 10 device. And as you can see, the device now is fully, back in business, fully connected to the network again. Okay, that's pretty much the way the kind of, the pieces, they work together. If I just go quickly back to here, yeah, that's pretty much the way it works together. When we comes to the, just do a quick review, when we have Defender for Endpoint, we have 6 different kind of pillars working together to provide the kind of the a top class security configuration. When I'm happy with that, the second step is to basically do the configuration, the backend configuration and the front end, the device configuration to whatever the security level we need. Could be, a more relaxed, could be a very tight security from there. Okay, when the configuration is deployed, we need to onboard the devices. And then by the time they are onboarded, fully protected, the next step is, start managing them do the kind of day-to-day management of them from the security portal. Okay, the the second option is to go one step further, and actually that would be the ultimate option for any organization, where we kind of bring a proper SIEM solution where we can have all the security products feeding information to a single location, in this case, Azure, in Azure Sentinel, and from the Microsoft Sentinel, and then Sentinel will collect information, will detect threats, as you can see from here. We'll do the investigation as well, again thanks to the powerful AI in machine learning, and will respond to those threats as well, responding with some automated tasks, exactly the one I just provided to you a few seconds ago. Okay, anyway, guys, that was pretty much what I wanted to share when it comes to the Defender for Endpoint. I've been working with this tool every single day of my life, including some good weekends for the last 2 years. I have onboarded now thousands and thousands of servers and devices, and I'm really happy to see, the way it works, and Microsoft is adding more and more features in terms of, making the product even, better in a kind of weekly or monthly basis. Okay, anyway, this is what I wanted to present today. Thanks very much for joining me this last hour. Hopefully you are not too tired of, so much information, or for the guys watching this recording available on YouTube as well. Okay, I believe I can see here the queue. There is no really questions on the chat box. And I can see you are in the standby already. If you are happy to take over, I've pretty much done for the night.
Yes, thank you, Jackson. It was a good presentation. I watched part of it. It was pretty engaging. Thank you for demos.
Okay, great. Anyway, I'm leaving for now, and good luck. And I know the next presentation is going to be brilliant. It's all about a really nice subject. You are very enthusiastic as well with the biceps and things. Yeah, that's great. Okay, everybody, thanks very much, and see you next time again. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Thank you, Jackson. Bye. Hello, everyone. And let me bring the screen that I'm going to share here in a moment. Let's find that. Okay, it's a bit different. Extra video for share screen. All right, here we go. So here's the slide that uh, it's a cover slide of my presentation that I'm planning to do today. First of all, welcome to the Gira Online Speaker LATAM 2023. I'm very excited to have you here. In addition of being, presenter, I was also moderating a session yesterday, and there's another session that's going to come tomorrow. It's also going to be about Bicep and where we are going with Bicep versioning, and what's next in Azure Bicep as a tool that is becoming more and more capable for doing the infrastructure as a code on Azure environment. So let me actually switch the gears here because we'll have a number of things. And the next slide here is a little bit information about myself. I'm not going to read it through the slides. I will just mention that I have been MCT since 2007, and I had good opportunities to practice and work on Microsoft Azure. And I'm also a Microsoft MVP in Azure, and I'm very honored for being rewarded and re-recognized by Microsoft this year for my contributions to the technical community. In addition to that, in the center bottom, you would see the URL to my blog, which is called Cloud Marathoner. I'm a founder of that blog, and the main idea and purpose of that blog posts are to share the cloud and Microsoft Azure infrastructure as a code and as well as architecture related information, and basically help everyone who is trying to learn about those technologies. My blog encourages everyone to share those information, tips and bits that are basically helpful for you in your cloud journey, and so that you can succeed in what you are trying to achieve. I'm active core member of Cloud Launch and Learn. This is a group, international group, who is holding the weekly sessions on cloud informations, and I'm actively participating on cloud family events. So that's enough about me. Sorry, it took a little bit. I would like to hear more about you. And if you want to get connected with me, or if you have any question, you see, you should be able to connect with me on LinkedIn and as well as on a Twitter, where I have my Twitter handle on the left bottom here. Okay, that's it. Next, I want to mention that if you want to learn from videos that have been created on LinkedIn platform, I have two videos there. One is Azure Bicep First Look, and another one is Azure Bicep Part 1 for a bit advanced implementations and scenarios. So please check them out if you are interested. I will have also QCR code at the end of presentation to these videos. Next, so let's see what we are going to cover today, right? I know that you are here to learn more about what are the private Azure Bicep modules, when and why to use them, and how they can enhance your company productivity if you are dealing with infrastructure as a code as a team. Okay, so first what we will do, we will start with express intro into Azure Bicep, because some of you might hear about Bicep, Azure Bicep here and there, but may not know where it is coming from, why it is there, and what benefits it brings. So that's what our express intro will cover. Then we'll go into code reusability and what are the ways you can reuse your Bicep modules, your Bicep code, so that you can regenerate complex infrastructure reusing the code that you already have developed. Next, we'll look into private Bicep modules, how you can create one and how you can get benefits of these private modules that would serve you and your team while developing and versioning the infrastructure as a code resources for your Azure deployments. Next, we'll look into some productivity tips. Here I'm going to mainly show a couple of scenarios that you can use on your Visual Studio Code and benefits to have that in place. And finally, we'll have a demo, of course, of these private Bicep modules, as the session is all about, and as well as some visualization in terms of where these private Bicep modules are actually getting stored, located, how you retrieve them, and how they get into your code, into your visualization of your infrastructure in your when you deploy them to your Azure environment. Okay, so that's it. First is express intro into Azure Bicep. But meanwhile, if you have any questions, I'm going to monitor the chat, and you are more than welcome to put the question there. Okay, so because that's the idea here. So please put your questions there. Okay, let's go. First, uh, Azure Bicep is actually a DSL, and DSL here stands for the domain specific language, and that means that the main purpose of Azure Bicep is to give you opportunity to create your infrastructure for Microsoft Azure deployment environments and define them, declaratively, meaning that it looks like a programming language, but actually it is not. It's a declarative language where you define the ultimate state of your Azure resources so that once it is deployed, that's going to be the state and configuration of your Azure resources. Next, with Azure Bicep, we need to mention that the main thing that it brings into us as a team or as an organization is it's going to simplify a lot the authoring and managing of Azure resources. That's the main power of it, because if you have been doing infrastructure on Microsoft Azure environment for the last more than 3 years ago, you would know that previously we had only ARM templates, which is um, Azure Resource Manager templates. Those things were based on JSON, and they were not fun to work with because there was a much steeper learning curve, and and that ARM templates were not actually designed to serve as a infrastructure as a code, right? So it's just a template based on JSON representation. That's ARM. But with Azure Bicep, what it does is basically brings an abstraction on top of ARM templates so that once you create and declare your infrastructure as a code using the Bicep, then that Bicep language is going to get transpiled into ARM templates and get applied to the Azure Source Manager layer. And we are going to look into that in a diagram in a few seconds. But before saying that, simply to describe Azure Bicep, it's one of the easiest way to do infrastructure as a code in your Microsoft Azure environment. So when somebody asks what's Azure Bicep, it's a DSL, and it is the simplest way to do your infrastructure as a code deployments and as well as management of that resources on Microsoft Azure environment. Okay, now if you remember, I just mentioned that Azure Bicep is actually Azure Bicep language uh, is abstraction on top of ARM template. That's what this actual graphic is showing. It shows that we have a Azure Bicep language that get deployed, and then we have ARM template. And once it reaches the ARM template and go through the Azure Resource Manager, then all the resources that defined in our Bicep code are going to be deployed to the resources within Azure environment. Okay, in terms of Azure Bicep language benefits, I'm not going to count them all here. There are more than 10, but I would just mention that it comes with very deep integration to Azure. It comes with pre-flight validation, and you don't have to manage any state like you have to do with, for example, Terraforms, where you have to manage the uh, state of your resources. And as well as Azure Bicep comes with real production support. So if you get into issues, you can open Microsoft Ticket from traditional channels and get that resolved. Now, in terms of evolution of Azure Bicep, it started from way back from 2020, and even actually before 2020, it was announced in, I believe, 2019. by the end of 2019 that Microsoft is going to develop first infrastructure as a code, and then it started with the alpha version. It progressed into version 0.31, where official support has been extended for Bicep language. And then currently where we are is we are still not at the stable version 1.0, but the version that we have is good enough for anyone start developing infrastructure as a code and deploying them into production, because Microsoft team is there. They are trained to help you if there's any issues. And being honest, I have been using it for almost more than 2 years now, and I didn't faced with any big issues. Of course, there were some issues while the versioning and new versions have been deployed. There might be bug fixes here and there, but there was no major issues that can prevent you from managing and deploying your uh, resources into the cloud, into the Azure. Okay, that's it. How to get started with Azure Bicep. I want to mention that I have a GitHub repo, which is very popular, by the way. It has a number of subscribers. Um, and let me show it here. I'm sharing my, let me bring and share my GitHub repo. Please let me know if you see that. You should be able to see it. And here, if you scroll down, in this repo, you should be able to see awesome Azure Bicep here. This is the repo that I'm maintaining, and as well as adding learning resources for Azure Bicep. It has more. It has 11 contributors, and it has a good set of Microsoft official and as well as community contributions to help you in your Bicep journey. But in terms of today's presentation and where the code will be sitting, you need to scroll down and click on Learn Bicep. This is here, Learn Bicep, and all the code and everything is going to be there, including the Azure Bicep, Azure Private Bicep modules. So let me click there. Here we go. This is the branch where you have the code, and most of the code is going to be located in a private project that's going to be deployed here. I need to merge it, but I will show it to you. So let's go back to our site. So to our topic, which is the private Bicep module. So before starting with that demo, I would like to show you how it feels and looks like to have the Bicep. To do that, I'm going to bring the Visual Studio Code. Let's bring that. So as you see, this is the Visual Studio Code, and what I opened is that Learn Bicep repo that I just showed you on my just few minutes ago, when you looked at the link, and link is going to be provided in the, I will put that in the chat. So let me put the link in the chat actually. So if we don't get, we don't forget about that. So this is the link to the, and I'm putting that link to the repo. Link to the repo. Okay. So you can have access. So it's in the chat. You should be able to access it. So what we are going to do here is, before jumping to the exercises, I'll just show you a simple declaration where we have for example, a simple storage account declared with Bicep code. So for example, now what you are seeing here, let me make it a bit bigger. Okay, here we go. This is the declaration of a storage account using the some environmental variables, and as well as the some functions, resource group functions, to declare two storage accounts. So this the beauty of Visual Studio Code and the Bicep language is that they are integrated pretty well. And for example, whenever you look at this code, if you have no idea about what type of resources are declared in this code, in this Bicep code, you can always scroll go to the right side here, okay, and then click on this icon, and this icon should be able to visualize, if everything is correct, it's going to visualize you the expected Azure resources of this deployment. And if I click on that, that's what I'm doing now. And here we go on the right side here, see that it's going to, the code on the left side here that we see is going to define two storage accounts with different names that we see on the right side. So let me close this now. So in terms of declaration, feel and look, it looks like you are programming and defining the parameters. Then you define variables. You have some string interpolation here, right? You have some functions. You have some ways to have your declaratives, meaning to define maximum and minimum lengths, to put your requirements on the parameterization and names of the parameters. And as well as you can define your actual resources, where you define your type of the resource. That's what we have in here. That's I'm currently defined. Then once you have the type, then uh, once you have the provider type, this is the basic Microsoft storage, then you define storage account. And once you have this type, then after add sign, you define the version of that Azure resource that you would like to declare. In our case, it's a simple storage account. And then, of course, you are able to define the properties and define the values, tags, and whatever is appropriate for your Azure resource. So that's how you define your uh, simple storage account using the parameters and variables in a simple way with Bicep language. To make this colorful and work, let me remind you that you want to go and install here Bicep extension. This is a must have if you are going to do any development on Bicep, and this is the Bicep extension. It's supported and deployed by Microsoft team. It's awesome extension. Thank you for supporting that, and do not forget to install it. That's my very, very important advice if you are going to develop anything in Azure Bicep. Okay, so that said, um, this was a very brief introduction. So did we close it? Yep. This was a very brief introduction into Bicep. We looked into a simple declaration of this representation of Bicep that defines two storage accounts. If you wanna, so what happens when you deploy that into Microsoft Azure is that it's going to get decompiled or transformed into ARM templates and then get deployed. And how this transformation, once this, let's see what happens when this transformation happens. And if you want to see that, what you need to do, you just need to come here in the terminal, that's and type az az bicep build. You need to build. Oops, of course, I typed nicep instead of bicep. So AC bicep build, and then we type the file name here. So we want to build the one that storage account, which is located under the modules, and the name is storage.bicep. Okay, bicep. No, it's not bicep config. Modules, storage. Let's see if tab helps us. Yep, it does. Storage.bicep. So once we run this command that you see here, let me make it a little bigger. So once we run this command, what should happen is that the storage bicep code that we just looked into, that's going to get converted into ARM template, right? That's the expectation. Let's see what happens. So it's going to run that. And then we should be able to see a here under storage bicep, we should be able to see the ARM template representation, which is going to be a file with .json extension. So let's look at that again. So here it is, our storage.bicep that we just had. So this is the new file that get added after the building our ARM template from a bicep code. And if you click on this, now here here we see a JSON representation of the same file. Let me just pull this down. We see the same representation. Okay, let me make sure that is it sharing? So are you able to see the screen? Let me actually make sure that on YouTube is everything going as expected. No. Let me see. So I need to make sure that you see the screen on the bicep here. Okay. Okay, let me make sure. Let me reshare the screen. It looked like there was some type of glitch in sharing what I see. So let me share the screen again. Sorry for glitch. Window. So entire window screen. Okay, share. All right, now what you should be able to see is the Visual Studio Code where we actually went and compiled and deployed the. So let me show it again. Here's the. So previously, what we did, I just went and deployed the. I built the file based on our ARM template here. Okay, we run this command here. So that made sure that our ARM template is compiled. Okay, and once this compiled, then we see two representation of that same storage account. So we have these two storage files. Let me just bring them here so you can see the comparison. So this is the first one, and this is the JSON. So let's make this on a second screen. Let me just divide that, and then this one split left or right. So let's here we go. So what we have here is we have a representation of the bicep code on the left side where we have defined two storage accounts, parameters, and variables. And then on the right side, we use the Azure Bicep build command in order to create the representation of the same bicep code in ARM template with JSON representation, where we have the same parameters here defined under the parameters. We have variables defined under the variables, and we should have two resources. In our case, it should be two storage accounts. This is the first storage account, and this is the second storage account. So it should match what you see on the left. It should match to your ARM template files that get generated. Okay, I hope it's clear. If you have any questions, just let me know, and I will come back to that question. So I'm going to close these two simple but yet powerful representation on how you can define and look at them. Now, I'm going to go ahead and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what our demo is going to look like. So now before jumping into private modules, right, Azure Bicep private modules, let's look at what is actually it brings to you, right? Before Azure private modules, the people who worked with Bicep, they may say, okay, we have a modules, right? So why we should use private Bicep modules? And the answer for that question is simple. If we go here, for example, into the representation where I'm going to show you a sample from the same repo where you can go into the samples. And here, if you want to see the modules, for example, you can click on number 7, the plugin number 7. deployment. So here, what you would see that where if you want to navigate and see, for example, how this storage module is actually look like, it's another, it will be a link. If you click on control, and then it will become like a link here, as you see, right? So it becomes as a link. So we just click on this, and then once we click, it's going to navigate us to the actual representation of that module. In our case, it's a bit different account, storage account with parameterization going to be deployed with that. So this is basically a link between a main Bicep file deployment here at the file that I just opened. And if you want to go and define a Cosmos, if you define a Cosmos database resources and we want to link that as a module, we just have to type the URL for that Cosmos DB Bicep, and it will act like a module. And of course, in addition to that, we would have to go ahead and define the parameters, how it is defined. So that's how regular modules are adding reusability into your Bicep code representation. And in this case, you may ask, okay, what this file actually represents? Pretty big. It has a lot of modules. So if you go and click here on the right corner into the visualization icon, it should show us all the resources that are getting deployed by that 7-deployment modules with parameter bicep file. That's part of this repo. So let's look what we got here. So we got actually an interesting deployment. So as you see here, we have four resource groups that are getting deployed with this deployment. And we have application service, we have Windows virtual machine module that deploys to Windows virtual machine. We have a storage module. And in addition to that, we have uh, another module that actually deploys the Cosmos DB as a database, right? That's what you see here. So how this all happens, it's because all our modules are part of the project. But in the cases where you want to store company-owned assets in a private container repository or some private repository where your team members can access and use them, and as well as version them in order to preserve all the best practices that your company, that your development team has in place. That's where private module, um, Azure Bicep private modules are come into the play. So let me go back now to the slides and show you what I mean by that. So here you have very simple but still powerful representation of what these Bicep private modules are all about. It's about getting your code, getting your Bicep modules which are in a working good condition, which are parameterized, and putting them into container registries, and then manage them as repositories of modules, and then use those repository of modules that we see here, right? Use them all. Let me go back here. And then we are going to use this, all the, container registries, all the modules that we send here, we are going to use as Bicep templates. So when we create our code, we want to reuse all the good best practices and all the investment that we put into our infrastructure as a code solutions, and then use them in deploying to the production, to the different environments where we are expected to run our workload. So that's what happens in this picture. And I'm going to show you how we can actually create that uh, Azure Bicep private modules and how you can use them in your code. Okay, that's going to be the second part of this presentation. That's I'm keen to start. But before starting that, this is another screenshot that I took from Microsoft documentation. When we define the modules in using the container registry, you would have this BR, which stands for Bicep repository. Then you have the name of that container registry. In our case, it's actually called Toy Company here, right? That what we have, Toy Company. And then, okay, Toy Company. And then this is the extension that we have for Azure IO, for Azure Container Registry. Then we have module repo. That's going to be the name, how we want to define it. Then there would be a module name, right? That's going to define it. And then we'll have a tag. So the tag part is very important. This is basically going to be your way of defining versioning for your private Bicep modules. Okay, so that said, let's go back now to the Visual Studio Code and do creation of the private Bicep module, and then we'll deploy a sample. Uh, we'll deploy there couple modules from our code in the Visual Studio repo that we have in GitHub, and then we'll version it, and then we'll use it to see how it works. Okay, that's going to be the rest of the demo where we are going to use. And while we are going to do that, we are going to show the some good productivity tips on Visual Studio Code. Okay, all right, so let's do that. I'm going to switch to Visual Studio Code now. Okay, and here we go. So before switching to Visual Studio Code, let me define that all the samples and everything, whatever you see here, you should be able to go and look at private project under that repo, and you should be able to see those files there. So I'm going to use them here. Okay, so to do that, let me make sure that I'm sharing the right screen and you are able to see it. Yep, it looks like everything is as expected. Okay, cool. So now what we are going to do is I'm going to go and we are going to create a private, we are going to create an ACR, which is the Azure Container Registry, using the Bicep. So we'll define it as a Bicep code, and then we'll define deploy an ACR into the resource group that we define. To do that, here I'll open the ACR.bicep. This is the basically ACR. It's a Azure Container Registry definition. I'm going to give it a bit different name here. We have LATAM private registry 5. We can call LATAM private, not private reg. So LATAM private registry 2. Okay, we'll give it an, or we don't have to actually put that name. I think it should be good because I deleted previous. So I'll just give it a name as it is here. LATAM private registry. Okay, that's going to be the name of our Azure Container Registry. Second, what we are going to do is we will define that container registry here by giving the name that we defined here, and then we'll have the location, which is the Azure region of the same that we have for the resource group, and we'll enable the admin use property so that we can go and interact with that. So let's deploy this account registry. But before deploying that, I want to bring the Azure resource groups and everything that I have. So here we have my Azure subscription, and I have pre-registered and created a resource group which is called latam-private-registry test-istus2. And here I already have one of the uh, a private registry. Okay, and just to show you what we will get at the end, we are going to get this container registry deployed, and we are going to get repositories to be deployed. I have ACR and web app repositories, and then in addition to that, here we'll get the versioning. For example, here for the web app, I have only version 1.00. But if I click on ACR, said we have two versions of that ACR infrastructure as a code file. So let's do that. So let's create from scratch. So this is what we have already, but now we are going to create a new one. Okay, let's do this. I will go back now to Visual Studio Code. Okay, that's where we are. And what we are going to do next is we are going to deploy our Azure Container Registry using the Bicep code representation. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save what we did here. Okay, clear CLS. Let's clear everything here. Then I'm going to publish our ACR repository. To publish our ACR repository, I need to use the same resource group name. Okay, and I need to reference the ACR bicep code. So let's do that. So to do the deployment, we would say AZ deployment group, Then we need to define the AZ deployment group create. We need to define the resource group. In our case, it is the same resource group that you saw on the portal. I'm going to copy paste that name. And then we need to define the file bicep code that we are going to use in order to deploy um, our ACR, our Azure Container Registry. And let's put the name here. So it's located in under the private project and it's called ACR Bicep. So that's what it is. So if you want to see, what would be the change, you can always put -c here at the end. It would do some pre-flight validation and let us know what are going to be the change. So what's happening now is in a few seconds, uh, so we should get to see something going on here. Yep. Okay, so that yellow squiggly stuff is actually a bicep linter that's under the bicep config file that you would see in this repository. It just gives us some warning saying that there are some symbolic names supporting ARM is experimental. So anyway, so that's what we get here. Let me make it bigger. So what we got here is we got response back saying that a new Azure container register is going to be created. Okay, that's the green. So do you want to do that? We say yes. Let's do that one. So I put the yes and say enter. So what we should see once this deployment finished, you should see a new ACR, new Azure Container Registry is actually created using our Bicep template, because in our Bicep template, okay, it's running now. Here in our Bicep template, we define the name, which is LATAM private registry, and it's a basic type that what needs to be deployed. Once this deployment succeeds, that's what we should see. While waiting for the response, we can switch back to the portal and refresh it here. It says okay, let's look at deployments. Yeah, refresh. So it looks like it's probably just deployed. So let's go back, click on refresh again. Here we go. So the file that we're expecting, the Azure Container Registry, is actually deployed here. Okay, that's the step number one that we're expecting to happen. Now, step number two is, so this is done. Step number two is going to be, we need to use that Azure Container Registry to publish our modules, right? So to publish our modules, we need to pick up one module and publish that. In our case, we have this app service demo. So app service demo is application service, basically, that has two resources, the service plan and as well as the web app. So if you want to see what's inside here, you can always again go click on icon here, Bicep Visualizer, and it should be able to tell what resources are part of this deployment. So what we are going to do, we are going to take that file and deploy it as a version 1 into our Azure Bicep registry, private registry. But before doing that, let me show you that we don't have anything there. So if you go to the newly deployed private registry and we look at repositories, as you see, it's empty. There's nothing there. So after this, deploying this template bicep code into that repository, you should see something there. Okay, let's do that one. So I'll go back here to our file. I will close this app service app name. And now we need to publish. To publish the file there, we need to define the Azure Bicep publish. That's the name of the command. Then we need to define the file that we are trying to publish. In our case, it's under the private project called app services bicep. Then we need to define the target, right, where we are publishing that. So the target here is going to be that we need to copy and paste. Basically, if you are not familiar, you need to go to that container registry, and this is the whole name, right? So we need to copy this whole name and put it here. Okay, but before putting that into deploying, you need to put BR, which stands for Bicep Registry. Okay, Bicep Registry, you put the whole name of that Bicep Registry URL, and then uh, we need to put the repository name there. In our case, it's a Bicep. It's Bicep modules. Okay, then we need to define what type of module is it. In our case, we know that it's a web app, okay? It's a web application. And then we need to define the version. In our case, let's start with a simplistic version of that's also, can be a different name. It's a just tag. It accepts anything you put, but to follow some standards, I'm using this version 1.0.0 just in order to make sure that later on when I'm versioning, if it's a major change or minor, I have the capability to define that. So let's enter, and now what is going to happen is we should be able, once this publish operation finishes, we should be able to see the first version of our web app deployed into the LATAM private registry, right? That what should happen. So it says it's done here. We can switch here the screens, and now we are looking into the back to the private registry here, right? So let's click on repositories. Okay, we clicked on the repositories, and now we see a Bicep module. Refresh Bicep modules web app is there. So if we click on that, we should be able to see our first version, right? The one that we just deployed, version 1.0.0. And if you click on that, it's going to give you some more metadata about uh, the type of the data, and if there are any referrers, you would see that. But this is the metadata. You wouldn't be able to see and access the actual file, okay? But the metadata and the version, as you see here, is the tag, the repository name. It's all going to be displayed here for your convenience. Okay. All right, so that's done. Next, what we are going to do, we want to get the second version of that. And what it means that we need to go and modify our app service demo. So I'm going to click on that app dash service demo. And here, we are going to apply some good practices. We know that if you define location, it's better to make sure that location of your service is actually same as your resource group. That's one of the good practices. It is not required, and you may have actually resources in your resource group which are in different Azure region, but the good practice says as good set of practices define it in a way that you need to have it there. Then we have application service name, which is defined well. It's using the unique string from the resource group name. And if you want to get the same consistent application service name and web app name based on the resource group name that's where it is deployed, this is one of the ways to automate that and have these prefixes. So this looks good for application service plan. We can also add that good practice. Actually, this green stuff is the something that I put there so that we can add them and enhance our infrastructure as a code. So now we have app name as well, service plan name. Uh, we can also change this if you want. We can call it application service plan and then dash plan. Okay, so we have everything there. We choose the free SKU so that we don't get extra charged for our demo here. So we save this. Okay, now we're going back to our deployment, and we are going to publish the second version of this, right? Because we made some changes. So we go there back, and now for the same script, we're gonna put here number 2 web app. And the difference between these two is on the first one, it actually required us to enter the Azure location, Azure region. The second, however, this second version of the web app, if we deploy it and use that one in our code, it's not going to ask us to enter Azure region. It's going to grab the Azure region from the resource group that it belongs to, and then have that in place, and as well as it will have a prefixes at the end of web app name, and as well as at the end of the application service plan name, right? So that's what we expect. Okay, it's finished here. Sorry. Let's switch screens here to the portal and refresh what we have. Yeah, sorry for that. So we have version 2.0 and we have version 1.0. So we have uh, both of those private modules deployed. So what we are going to do now, it's time to use them, right? Before using them, we need to set up aliases in our bicep code so we can use them. So now we know that we have it here. Let's go back and use them. So to use them, we are going to use them for deployment of the web app using the private bicep modules that are, let's say, they are secure and they are approved by the team where we are working with. So to do that, what we're going to do is we are going to go to the main bicep app. But before doing that, you need to go and define a bicep config here. The bicep config file, it's already in the repo. You can copy and paste and modify that. But in my case, I need to find module aliases, find the BR, which stands for the bicep repositories. And here I have Gira LATAM demo. That's the name of the alias. And then I need to define the name. So here, instead of having this name that you see here, all right, we need to replace that. And we need to replace that with something like the one that we just deployed. So I'm going to go to the container registry, and I'm going to take this URL of the container registry and put that here because that's what needs to be there. Okay, so once we put that there, next thing we need to do is to put the module path, which is bicep modules. That's what we are going to retrieve from there, and then use them. Okay, so to use this, and here we can change this, and maybe not Jira Latam, but we can make it a bit smaller and put it Latam demo. So we put that change in our bicep config file. We are going to go back to our main bicep file, and here I'm going to save the time. I'm going to uncomment that, and here you see it's not able to find it. There's like red squiggly lines saying that it's not able to find that location. There's no Gira Latam. So we are going to type uh, it's using the convention, we are going to type BR, which stands for the bicep repositories. Then we'll put the alias name Latam demo. Okay, that's the name of the alias. Then put the name of the module because we deployed it as a web app, right? And then we need to define the version. In this case, it's using the version 1.0.0. If we deploy that way, during the deployment, we are going to be asked for the Azure region. Would have to, put the Azure region there. But we don't want to do that. We want to use the, second version. Let's change and make it 2. This red squiggly lines means that Bicep is trying to get that module from the repository. So once you get this, once you see that this red line is not there, it means that module has been loaded into the cache of your machine, so that it will be used during the deployment process. So we have this nice private web app, which is not going to ask any Azure regions from us because it's going to pick up the one uh, from the parameter that we set here, which is the West US. You can put here different Azure region depending where you want to do that. For now I'll put that West US 2, or let's have it as a West US, no problem. So we have the West US here as the region. So let's do the following now. We are going to deploy this, and when we deploy that into a resource group, we should be able to see a web app deployed there, right? That's the outcome from this. So let's do that. To deploy this, we are going to go and first let's deploy a new resource group. We can deploy a new resource group by typing az group create. Then we can give it a name. We can give it a name like LATAM Bicep Demo West US, right? That's the region where it is. And then we can define the region where we want to deploy it. And we can say West US. And then we need to press on enter. So now what will happen is that a new resource group with the name LATAM Bicep Demo West US should be created. Okay, I'm not going to navigate there, but you can check it while we are doing this code. Next, I'm going to deploy the that deploy our main.bicep, this file, which is actually referencing the bicep code, bicep module from the Azure private register, right? Because that's what it is. So we are going to use this main bicep from private project in order to deploy it and see what happens. So to do that, I'm going to go back and type my command az deployment group create. Okay, so you wanna no, it's not a deployment. Yeah, az deployment group create. Now we need to put the name of the resource group, right, that we just created. In our case, it is called LATAM Bicep West US. Let's do that one here. Okay, let's make no typos. And then within that private project, we have a file called main.bicep, which is referencing the modules from the private Azure register, right? That's what it does. So let's run this command. You can always put -c and run it with the pre-flood validation. I don't need that right now, so I just run this command. So what we should see is within a couple minutes, once that deployment actually succeeds, we should be able in resource groups to see a new resource group, which is LATAM Bicep Demo West US. That's the new resource group that we should see. And then here, after deployment succeed, we should see new resources. Let's click here at deployments. We see that there are some deployments are going on. We have private web app deployment that's going on here. They are in progress at the moment. So let's wait a little bit. It will take some time. I will switch back to Visual Studio Code now. So we are waiting here for our deployment to succeed. It's still running. So after probably a couple seconds here, you can go and grab your cup of coffee or tea. It may take another 5 or 10 seconds, maybe less or maybe more. But what we should see here finally after deployment is our web app up and running in our resource group where we actually pushed it right now. And while pushing our web app, we are used our Azure private Azure Container Registry, where our private modules have been pulled from there, our private Bicep modules pulled in order to be deployed in our application, right? So it's succeeded here. I'll switch here to the back to the place where we were. I'm going to refresh it. So it's all succeeded. We'll go to the overview to see what we have here. And here we go. We have our application service plan with the prefix, and we have my application with the prefix. And they are all deployed to the West US. And the reason is because our actual resource group is actually using the West US as a region. That's the reason why it was picked up from there based on the function that we put in our web app declaration. So if you want, you can always go and click on that web app. You can look how it looks like. It's a pretty standard posture. I don't expect anything special. It's just so about, so it needs to warm up. Nope, you don't want to restart. It needs to warm up, and after a couple seconds or so, you should see a standard, web app, blank web app that's running. on our environment. So we succeeded in that by deploying our resource group, LATAM Bicep demo, and we deployed our web app resources using the Azure Private Registry. And the Azure Private Registry that we used was from this region, from this resource group, and we used the LATAM Private Registry, which is here. And currently, what we have is we have a repository with the modules, which has two versions. So next, what you can do, you can deploy other, for example, your Azure SQL, you can deploy storage account, you can deploy any other Azure resource that you want to have versioning control, and you want to have some team standards built into your infrastructure as a code so that you can follow certain compliance and standards in your team while you are deploying to different environments, but you want to keep those standardized versioning of your templates. Okay, I'm going to go back now to the slides where we were. Again, so to go back what we did, uh, I, we just went through the Azure Bicep registry, how to set up that from the scratch, right? We deployed there our resources, we version control that, and then we use that in our main Bicep file where we refer to our Azure Bicep private module that's deployed in Azure Container Registry, and we use that in order to deploy a compliant, well parameterized resources in our sample, resource group environment. Okay, so and again, this is the path to our registry where we define the BR stands for Bicep Registry. You have the name of that Azure registry, the whole URL. Then you have the module identifier that we define during deployment, and you have the tags, which is defines the versioning, how you want to tag your uh, Bicep modules. Now, we went through some productivity tips. We looked into private registry. We looked into Bicep Visualizer. That was part of the demo. We looked into some code snippets that I have in the repository. And there are some auto-generated parameters in Visual Studio Code that you can use. But other than that, I want to mention that you can enable some experimental features in your Azure Bicep by navigating into the extensions in Bicep and enabling them. That's one of the ways to do that. This is the screenshot from that capability. Next, we already looked at Bicep Visualizer. And before going through covering what we actually went through, I want to again go back and show you the Visual Studio Code. And for example, here, if you have a sample file, let's say in our case, application service demo, you can always right click on this file and say, generate parameter files. And this one will give you an option to choose generation of the files using the JSON or Bicep param. So you can use any of them. That's one of the capabilities, new capabilities that were added in last few months. Okay, so you can experiment with that. And another thing that I want to mention here is Bicep configuration file that I didn't have a chance to cover, but you can enable experimental features here in your Bicep config, which part of it is formatting. So these lines that you see here, if you have a special formatting of your code based on team standards, you can look at these samples, enable and disable certain features. Okay, all this code again is on the GitHub repo. You can go and look at that. So to wrap it up, what we covered, we started with Express intro to Azure Bicep. Then we looked into code reusability, the modules in Bicep, and then we will transition into private Bicep modules by creating the Azure Container Registry and using that in our infrastructure deployment. Then we looked into certain productivity tips while doing these operations with private Bicep modules and with Bicep code. And you saw all that demo happen in the second part of my demonstration. Now, if you have any questions, this is the time. You can put that into the chat. But while waiting for your questions for the next couple of minutes, I want to say thank you for being in this session with me. and looking and trying to learn. These are the some QCR codes from the Learn Azure Bicep GitHub, from Azure Bicep First Look course that I have on LinkedIn, and as well as from awesome Azure Bicep resources that I have freely available, and I actually maintain them with the community members, all together for more than a year on GitHub repo. So please check those QCR codes. I will bring here again my Azure Bicep, not Azure Bicep, but my GitHub repo. Please go ahead and check out it. I would recommend to look at Learn Bicep here, this first, where all the code is there and some references for learning materials and getting up to speed with Azure Bicep under awesome Azure Bicep repo. Once you are done with that, these are the LinkedIn Learning video courses that I have created that you can check it out. You can also type here Azure Bicep in the search and get them. They are free level. They are available there, and you can, if you never did anything on Bicep Code or Azure Bicep with Visual Studio, you can actually get started learning and doing stuff there. And finally, a big thank you for the Bicep community that we have on GitHub. It's Azure Bicep GitHub. It's also a primary source of information that I use in my demo and presentations. Thank you, Azure Bicep team, for a great job that you are doing, and for the community calls that I'm, trying to participate each time. So that said, next is we come to the end. I see there is a comment saying good session. Thank you for putting that there, Ventana. Really honored with that. But I want to say big thank you for everyone who was watching this session, and especially for the organizers of this Gira Online Speakers for Latam and Europe. It's an honor to be here second year in a row and being able to present great developments in Azure Bicep community, especially with private Bicep modules and how you can get up to speed and start, learning and doing them. So that said, I want to just say again, any questions, put them in the chat. You can also put them into YouTube channel and ping me there. I'll try to follow up. And I will also try to put those resources in that comments section of the YouTube channel. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jira Online team. And I hope you liked this session. So you can put the thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. Support these guys; they are doing awesome work. And for tomorrow, actually, if you want to dive into what's the future of Azure Bicep, where it is going, what are the latest features have been deployed with some quick and short demos, that what I'm going to cover tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. It's 6 p.m. I believe UTC time. So check the sessions, and thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure to have this session with all of you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.